appreciate when you guys leave stuff on stage because then I get to have some. So, oh, it's right here. You don't have to find it. It's right here. Oh, Yahtzee. Yeah, this was gum in a wrapper up here, so it's a little different. What is your background picture? Is it not you? Oh, okay. Here you go. Sweet. Well, welcome to Garage. If you didn't know, Jeremy is not here, so you get to hear from me tonight, so I apologize in advance. Jack, if you lose, I will cry. My name's not Jack. That's weird. So a couple of weeks ago, we started this new series called 6 Decisions for a Successful Life. Technically, we are in week 2. We had Halloween, so things kind of got wonky. So in week 1, Jeremy started with something pretty basic on how to have a successful life. And that question is something that he's asked us before. You have questions, comments, concerns? You counted doors? Yeah. So do you want the real answer or do you want me to make something up? Make something up. Okay. So one of those doors is the failure door. And it's just Russian roulette. Yeah. So good luck. In real life, there were supposed to be 7 decisions. We did not have 7 weeks, so we combined 2 of them. Yeah, Zoe, welcome to class. We just talked about it. Yeah, but this was already made. I don't know. I'm not the graphic designer. His name is Jeremy Robinson. Most of you have his phone number, so you can complain to him. You're good. Oh, gosh, goodness gracious. Anyway, so Jeremy started with the question that he's asked us before. What are we going to do with the fact there is a God? And then we had Halloween, and then we spoke about it in small groups. And though this is a question we've heard before, it is obviously our hope here at Crossroads and at Garage that you guys decide to follow Christ, that you make that choice and decide to step into the Bible and step into faith when the rest of society tells us not to do that. We do understand, however, which is why we mention it all the time, that some of us are new to Christianity or new to church, or if you're like me, you just struggle in general to have faith all the time when things continuously happen that are not great. Life is not easy, and I think when we look at Christianity, sometimes we have this lens of, can I live up to those expectations? Oh, gosh. It's kind of cold up here and kind of hot, so there's that. I don't even know what this says. So there are 2 choices with that question, right? You can decide to follow Christ or you can decide not to follow Christ. And for those of us who are still on the fence of deciding to follow Christ, or maybe you're just like in a really wavy season with your faith, it would appear rather that there are lots of rules and regulations that you can look at your friends who decided not to follow Christ or have decided not to follow their faith, and it looks like they have all of this freedom. And the harsh reality is that regardless of what you choose, bad things are going to happen in your life. If you decide to follow Christ, the ideal is that God will save you from the pains of life. The reality is that's not happening. The reality is that I will continue to sin, whether or not I follow Christ. The reality is you will continue to be sinned against, whether or not you decide to follow Christ. The good news is that should you decide to follow Christ, that any pain that you have, any suffering that you have in this lifetime will leave when we die and go spend eternity in heaven. If you decide not to follow Christ, then this is it. Any pain and suffering that you're dealing with, this is it. This is the best it's going to get. And as Christians, we have the luxury of knowing that, yes, right now it sucks, but there's something better on the other side. Holy smolies. Way off script here, guys. I have no idea what's going to happen now. Okay, so if you're like me and you've decided to follow Christ, the hard part now is continuing to be the light. How many of you have heard you're supposed to be Christ's light? You're supposed to be the light of the world. You're supposed to be able to walk into a room and people are going to say there's something different about that person. The idea is what's different is that you believe in Christ and that you live differently. However, it is incredibly overwhelming to be a light, to be positive, to be happy when bad things just happen. And then so instead of embracing the goodness of knowing that we will live eternally, we get stuck in the present, we get stuck in the here and now, and we start to complain, like my 3-year-old toddler who complains when I say, no, you can't have more candy because we're about to have dinner. He doesn't care that we're going to have dinner. He wants candy now. Just like when we're in the midst of our pain, we don't care that our suffering will end and we will get to heaven. We want to feel better now. We're toddlers. And this doesn't just happen in the Christian world. And it doesn't just happen to Christians, right? Most of us know somebody who has it worse than us. We probably know people who have it a lot better. But for sure, there's somebody that you can think of that has worse grades than you, or their parents are a little crazier than yours, or their siblings are a little bit wackier, or their addiction's a little bit worse. They're not as good of an athlete. We live in a society where we constantly are looking at someone else to see who has it better. And the problem with that is that if we continue to look left or right or up or down or forwards or backwards to see who else has it bad, then we get stuck in our sadness. We get stuck in the fact that we didn't make varsity. We get stuck in the fact that I got a 3 on my AP test. We get stuck in the fact that my boyfriend broke up with me. I feel like somebody was really sad over here, so that was strange. Because when I looked over, nobody was looking. And it prevents you from becoming successful. It prevents you from moving forward. So if I was a nice person, and if you know me at all, you know I'm not. If I was a nice person, I would say it's going to be okay, and I would coddle you and hug you and tell you that the world is mean and you are a great person. And while, yes, the world is mean and, yes, you are a great person, I'm here to tell you that the buck stops here. The buck stops with you. Now, that's probably an old saying for some of you. But I believe, and I believe the Bible supports that regardless of what you're going through, regardless of your life circumstances, regardless of choices that you've made, the sins you participate in, and the sins that have been taken against you, regardless of all of the pain and the trauma and the betrayals that you're facing, the reason that you are sitting where you are emotionally, physically, has everything to do with you and the decisions that you make. Now, that goes against everything that we've been taught socially, and maybe in your family, and maybe even here at church, you've been taught differently, that it's okay to blame someone else. But the reality is, if you want to live a successful life, whatever success looks like to you, whatever you feel Jesus is calling you to do, then you have to do 2 things. You have to choose to follow him, because only then will you get to your full potential. But you also have to take ownership of your stuff. Every single morning you wake up And you can think of a million reasons why today's not going to go right. I didn't get to study for my final. I was up all night fighting with my boyfriend. I was, out late partying because nobody would take me home. And every single time you think of a reason why you're not going to perform to the best of your ability, automatically you're going to think of somebody or something that happened that's going to prevent you from doing that. But I believe you have control of it all. I believe that I'm standing here in front of you today giving a message, pregnant with my 4th boy, my gosh, because of decisions that I've made, good and bad. I've made a lot of very cool choices, some would say. People have hurt me. People have betrayed me. Most of you know that I got pregnant before I got married. Most of you know that guy isn't around. And I had options, right? My reaction to that event in my life could have changed the trajectory of my entire life. I could have been a typical, stereotypical single mom. I could have just said, this is it, and I could have accepted all of the welfare that I needed. And nobody would have blamed me, and nobody would have questioned me. They would have said, she's a single mom. What else is she going to do? I made a different choice. I made a decision. I made a bad choice. Something bad happened. And instead of sitting there feeling bad for myself, I made a choice to go back to school. I made a choice to move home and beg my parents to help me. It's not that my pregnancy went away. Most of you know he's 8. He's here. So it's not like my bad choice or the depression that I had while I was pregnant disappeared. I decided to keep moving forward. And I don't think that you can be successful without doing that. The problem is when we make a choice, when it's our choice, it's really easy, or it's easier for us to say, yeah, okay, I made a bad choice. I need to fix this. But we get really screwed up when somebody sins against us. We feel really slighted when somebody does something that hurts us, that maybe is out of your control. And unlike the version of us that decides not to study for a test and we fail that test and we take responsibility for that, when something bad happens to us out of our control, we want to sit in that. And that's just how we are. That's just human nature. I don't want to look bad. I don't want to take ownership in something that maybe I could have reacted differently to, because ultimately the sin didn't start with me. It started when my high school boyfriend, who dropped out of high school and drank too much, would call me at 3 o'clock in the morning just to fight because he was drunk. That was the sin. But my reaction to maintain a relationship with that was my choice. And maybe when you're sitting in the seat, you're like, well, duh, you should have broken up with him. Well, I know that now. Okay, but we all know that there's been a moment where somebody did something to us, and instead of thinking logically, instead of thinking, how can I better this situation even though it's happening to me, we allow it to continue to happen. And we allow it to continue to bog us down and prevent us from living a successful life, prevent us from being the light that Jesus calls us to be. Sorry. Thanks. So here's the reality. Whether you decide to follow Christ or not, whether you plan to pursue him fully or watch from the sidelines, whether you call yourself a Christian proudly or you're still trying to figure it out, you were born a sinner. And you were born into a world of sin. And that's our human condition, to sin. The world is going to be a broken place whether you believe in Jesus or not. You will sin. And you will be sinned against. And you will cause pain, and others will cause pain for you. And without hesitation, you will pass the buck. Because if you look at your life, you do it every day. Why are you failing your math class? Your teacher doesn't like you. Why are you not starting on some athletic team? Your coach doesn't like you. Why are you and your boyfriend or girlfriend fighting? Because of them. We pass the buck, and the crazy thing is this is not new. Now, I would love to blame social media on this because I'm an adult and that's what I do. I blame it for all of your problems. But this is not a social media problem because we see it in the Bible. This is where you respond. Why do we have sin in the world? No. Who? Why? Because we're humans. But who started it? Adam and Eve. Not my fault we have sin. I'm not the sinner. It was Adam and Eve. Next. Who do we blame for Christ's death and and arrest? Whose fault is that? Right? Rome's. Pontius Pilate. Some people say Judas. Some people say the Jews. Okay? It wasn't already planned, even though he told us before he even knew it was going to happen that it was going to happen. It's somebody else's fault. They all play the blame game, and that's what we do. Before we were here, Eve took a bite of an apple because of a snake, and Adam took a bite of an apple because of Eve. If you continue through Genesis and Exodus, you meet Moses and Aaron, right? Moses leads the Israelites to the promised land. Aaron, his second hand in charge, while Moses is getting the 10 Commandments from God, encourages the people to gather up their gold, and he throws it into a fire, and out comes a golden calf. On top of creating this idol for them to worship, he builds an altar to put the calf on top of. And when Moses comes down from the mountain, Aaron doesn't take responsibility for it. He says it was their fault. You know the Israelites are prone to sin. And on top of that, I didn't really make the calf. I just took the gold and I put it into the fire, and out came a golden calf. Because passing the buck is way easier. And it continues. And there are plenty of stories. And if you fast forward to Jesus and Peter, Peter denies Jesus 3 times before Jesus dies. If you know the story, Peter and Jesus were like besties. Jesus loved Peter. He was one of the favorites. So when Jesus comes back from dead and he meets with his disciples, he asks Peter who he is. Do you believe I'm the Son of God? And at that time, Peter has to take his blame in this and say, yes, you are the Son of God. And on top of that, he gets insulted because Jesus asked him 3 times, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Because when I needed you to say you knew who I was, you didn't. And now all of a sudden you do. But the good news is that even for those of us who pass the buck, even those of us who look left and right and up and down and forwards and backwards to blame somebody else, there is redemption and healing and success. In that moment with Jesus and Peter, after Peter picks up his cross, takes the blame for his portion, he then leaves that meeting and plants all of these churches. Adam and Eve, even though they are the reason we have sin, they are the mother and father of manhood. We trace it all the way back, right? The Bible traces it all the way to Jesus. Without Adam and Eve, there would be no Jesus. Aaron still got to take the Israelites to the promised land. There's a lot of things that I don't know. But what I do know is that you are guaranteed to suffer in this life. That's just our reality. We have no control over that. Suffering is happening. And I know that human nature calls us to be successful. That's what we want to do. Every morning when we wake up, you want to be successful. You want to be like whoever on Instagram, or you want to be like whoever in band, or you want to be like whatever football player. It is our human nature to want to be successful. But we can't be successful if we don't take ownership of our stuff. We cannot be successful if we continue to pass the buck. Because all that does is perpetuate this sadness. And then we sit in it. And instead of moving forward, instead of picking up our cross, which is just Christianese for taking your suffering with you, then we will just sit there and you will become overwhelmed and you will drown and you will not know how to get out. The only way to have success in this life is to take your pain with you forward, to take your trauma with you forward. Now, please do not hear that I'm saying don't to deal with your mental health. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't hear that your emotions are not valid, that the pain or trauma that you feel is not real. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not thinking you're going to get over it tomorrow. But there's a huge difference in being a victim of a sexual assault and just sitting in that, accepting the fact that you're a victim, versus you taking that and saying, what am I supposed to do with this? How can I use this to further God's love? There's a huge difference in determining how successful you will be by your current situation. If we rewind 9 years ago, if I just sat there, I wouldn't be working on my master's. I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't have found a father for my fatherless child. If I would have stayed in that situation and stayed in those emotions and stayed crying on my apartment floor because I didn't know what to do, or allowed the depression to just swallow me up because I had become every statistic I said I would never become, then I wouldn't be here today. Again, that pain and trauma follows me. It's still there. Ask my husband. But I brought it with me. I picked up my cross. I carried my suffering and said, yes, painful things have happened to me because of direct choices that I made and indirect choices that I've made. And instead of just sitting in in my suffering, I transcended my suffering. I brought it with me. I made it useful. It's now a story that I get to share, to show students that you don't have to become a statistic because you make a choice. If you want to live a successful life, the buck stops here. Whatever you're going through, honestly, it doesn't matter. Which I don't want to downplay your stuff. I don't. But you have two choices. You can sit in your sadness and your suffering, or you can pick it up and attempt to walk forward. But until you pick it up and attempt to walk forward, success is not something that's going to come your way, or not the version of success that you want. Complete sidebar. Do any of you watch Netflix? Cool, I got 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's a show called Made. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like one of those 10-episode dealy boppers. I don't know. Super great. My husband and I just finished it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up with this. In the show, bad things happen to her. And the entire show is about how she could continue to live in this cycle of suffering, or she can move forward. And as you're watching the show, if you decide to watch it, every time she takes a step forward, something pushes her back. And she has to regain all of her suffering, and she has to relive all of her trauma and attempt to move forward again. Christian or not, suffering's happening. Christian or not, you're going to cause pain. Christian or not, you're going to want to be successful. But the only way we can get there is if you tell yourself it stops here today. It stops with me. I don't care what Joe did to me. I don't care what my mom said. I don't care what coaches said. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to pray. Lord, thank you for the opportunity for growth. Thank you for the opportunity we have to be introspective and to take responsibility for things that are possibly out of our control. I ask that while we move through this week, that we have courage to reevaluate why we are where we are and see in what ways we can pick up our cross and tell ourselves that this buck stops here and continue to move forward for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
You give life, you are love. So the song really talks about God leading us into uncharted territory. So I want you guys to make this a prayer that God will give you the strength to take those steps. You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in a mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed, and you won't start now. Sing it out. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, you are mine. Oh. You are mine, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Sing it out. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my. Sing it out. Spirit, Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My faith will be made stronger. Make us your prayers tonight. Believe you guys. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine. Oh, and you are mine. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. Oh, my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear.
So just a couple of reminders tonight. You guys do have Garage Late Night. I can't remember what we called it. It's at Cane's, 8:30 to 9:30. Also, this is the QR code that if you want to do Operation Christmas Child, go ahead and scan this. I will have it out there. If you have a couple of minutes, we'd really like for you guys to spend time in your connecting groups. We say two things here every week. You are loved and prayed for, and you are accepted here just as you are. Don't leave yet, because I want to teach you something. Every Sunday night, Jeremy says, you are loved and accepted and prayed, blah, blah. And then he says something to the effect of, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Now, if you've ever stood by me, I respond to that. Thanks be to God, which is just a traditional thing. So I want to try that tonight, okay? So I'm going to say, you are loved and prayed for. You are accepted here just as you are. Now go in peace to love and serve the Lord. And you are going to say, thanks be to God. Kate has it. Okay, so we're going to try it again. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. Thank you, guys. Go find your connecting groups. If you don't know where you're going, come see me. I will attempt to direct you. I only know where a couple of them are, so we'll find them together.